World-class guests, fascinating stories, inspiring messages. Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about conscious performance. I'm delighted to welcome special guest, Chris Plourde. Chris is a Los Angeles-based conscious performance coach, consultant, speaker, and mind-body instructor who has worked with and coached well-known companies such as Walt Disney, Equinox, YPO, Tender Greens, Enterprise Car Rental, Xerox, Lululemon, and many more. By disrupting old patterns and identifying limiting beliefs, Chris guides his clients through the journey of becoming the greatest version of themselves. You can reach Chris at his website, chrisplourde.com, and I'll include a link in the description. Welcome, Chris. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
I am excited, and I'm excited to be learning about this whole aspect of coaching and all of the pieces and parts that you put together. But is it okay if we start with your story? Because I understand you had a rough start and your dad was a little less than awesome and you grew up in a rougher part of town. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, well, no, I have an awesome dad. He's incredible. Both my parents, and they're still alive. They gave me the childhood I needed to have for my growth, to be the man I am today, to be the father I am today. Right. There's
love. And, I think whatever our experience is growing up, we probably can come up with that same conclusion. Okay.
Right.
So I apologize to you and to your father, who was awesome and was exactly what you did. But
yes. Well, that's the whole thing. I think it's, a lot of the work I do with my clients is embracing their story. It's owning their story of what it is that happened for them as opposed to what happened to them. Right. And looking at those pieces that I've had in my life, having, growing up in Boston or south of Boston in a town called Brockton. A good city, a lot of pride in that city, but it was a rough city. There was a lot of, fights and different gang related things and so on and so forth. But, a lot of cities have these things that go on. It's not like I looked at it going, oh man, I need to get out of here. I was in sports. I was able to, had some great friends. It was just in retrospect, looking back, I go, wow, if I look at, the kid down a couple streets down or a couple houses down that ended up committing suicide, or the house behind us later on ended up having like this big drug raid. And, you look back, you go, wow, that was kind of rough, but those were the situations and the circumstances that allowed me to develop certain gifts and certain, a way of being, a mindset that got me to where I am today. And I look at that, when I lost a sister at the age of 12, right? And she was almost 9. So that was a terrible thing that happened, right? But I didn't live in it and go, if that didn't happen, eventually, then we'd be here. I look at it and go, what a beautiful opportunity I had to live with this special soul for 9 years. And look what all the love and the beauty she gave me. So it was a reframing of, this is horrible, to what an amazing opportunity, right? To having a father, that struggled with alcohol, his whole life. And to look at him and go, he had a really tough childhood, so to speak. He lost his mother when he was young. And I was able to see, nobody gave him the tools to be a great dad, but he was the best dad that he was for me, that he knew how to be. He did his best job. He still is doing his best job. Yeah, everyone's doing their best job. And if I go around, I can embrace it or I can judge it. Right. And if I'm judging it, that's an unresolved trigger that I have within myself that I need to look at a little more clearly. So.
Okay, this is magical, absolutely magical, because as you're describing these experiences and saying, isn't this a wonderful thing? And it gave me this opportunity and it gave me that opportunity. You, Chris, are leaving people without excuses. And that's kind of a harsh
Mhm.
thing to say. Hard things that we've been through, losing a
Mhm.
sister and dealing with an alcoholic father and living in a rough part of town, that these things are something that can go through you and that you can go through, but it doesn't have to define you.
It's right. Right. You get to look at the piece eventually, right? When you're ready to step into ownership of it. Right. And that's the one thing as a coach. And when I get to work with people, people aren't always ready when you think they're ready. You have to be ready to kind of go, okay, well, if it's today, great. Let's do some work and let's sharpen some of our life's tools. If it's in a month from now, fantastic. Then let me know and then we can do some work. But I can't want it more for them than they want it for themselves. If they're ready to step into freedom within them, they have to look in the mirror and say, where am I not free? Where am I waking up at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. and going, there's that nagging thing, that situation that keeps coming up over and over again. That's your lack of freedom. So, and we get to identify that and say, do I want to continue feeling stuck? Do I want to continue feeling victimized? Or do I want to really step into the power and go to that place that I'm supposed to be in this life? Right? Because we all have this soul's purpose, so to speak, to take all of those things that have happened for us. And then I believe that we get to use those gifts and be in service in order to really make this place a better place, right? If that's what our desire is. I think humans are. We're born to be in service. That's what fulfills us.
That is so true. Something that fulfills us. So let's back up just a teeny bit and talk about freedom. So what is freedom to you? You talked about freedom is not being stuck and not being triggered. Is there more to it than that?
Well, I think so. There is a point for me, if I look at where there's certain things that arrive in our subconscious. So I'm looking at it and going, okay, is anxiety showing up for you every single day when, your boss, gets on the phone, or when you come in conflict with your partner, or if you have a communication, you're butting heads all the time. And it's like, I want to run from that. Right. It's being able to look at these situations and shifting the context and go, I want to own this. I want to run towards it. I want to see the lessons within it. And that takes work. It's not like you can't just go into a situation and go, okay, I'm going to fix this overnight. It's same reason you can't go to the gym and get fit in one day, right? It takes work. If we want to burn new neural pathways and create new habits, it takes work. And I think the biggest misconception people have is that they walk into something they're trying to resolve within themselves, and they think, because I faced it, then the next time it's going to be over. Or they say, why is this happening to me again? I thought I already dealt with this. And the whole thing is, it's a spiral, right? And each time it just gets a little bit softer and softer and softer. It never completely goes away. But the whole point of doing the work is to bring it to a point where it's just a whisper, where it doesn't affect you. It doesn't drive your decisions any longer, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay. So you're saying that the situations kind of circle and cycle around, but it becomes softer and softer until it's like an echo, until a shadow, and you're okay.
It's a whisper. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's beautiful. I like that definition of freedom. I don't think of a better word to describe that feeling of inner peace and that not being triggered and not being weighed down by those things in the past. There's another thing that you mentioned that I just thought was so beautiful, and that is the timing and being patient with people and knowing and recognizing whether or not they're ready, and not trying to force someone who isn't ready. And I think that's very challenging when you're in a supportive role. Like, say you have a loved one who's struggling with depression or anxiety or whatever issue they might be having. And we want to be able to flip that light switch and make them all better.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we really can't. I think our role is to invite and to teach, not to accept responsibility for someone else's issues. And that includes in the role of a coach. It's like, you bet I can help you when you're ready to be helped.
Yeah, that's right. And I think I learned that at a young age, or, as I went through my 20s, if my dad would start drinking again, and it was like, I remember getting really upset and getting really angry with him, or being very disappointed and then finally getting to a place where I'm like, I can't bring that energy into my family here. Right. I'm going to love him no matter what. I'm going to love him, but he's making these decisions for himself. Am I going to have a hard talk with him? Sure. Am I going to be like, give him truth? Absolutely. But he's making that choice, and I can make the choice not to let that affect me. When my clients sign up and when we go on a year-long coaching, journey together, there's work that they get to do. I'm not doing it for them. I'm here showing them the mirror. I'm giving them opportunities to really step up in their lives, right? Showing them where they might be repeating the same patterns over and over and over again, right? Getting them to commit to themselves. Yes, to me, they're making agreements to me, but it's to themselves and to the life they want to live and that they deserve to live in, right? So it's amazing to hold that. And I think it comes down to boundaries, right? Is setting boundaries.
I love it. Tell me more.
And setting boundaries is not a act of I'm going to just put this boundary up and you can't come through here. What Brene Brown says, people with the strongest boundaries have the most compassion, right? So you can have a ton of compassion for somebody, but putting up a boundary can be the most loving thing you do for them, for yourself, right? Saying, no, we made this agreement not to do this anymore. Or, we'll give an example of when you drink, you can't be around the kids. I know my sister did that with my dad at one point, said, you know what? If you're going to drink, I don't want you around my children. That was a loving boundary. Still loves them, but that was the whole point. Like, this is what we need to do in order to establish this agreement so that we can have a relationship moving forward. Because without those, it just gets all muffled and gray. And when you're in the gray area of things, that's when a lot of energy just gets dispelled and you're exhausted and you don't know why. So those agreements are vital, I think, in life.
I think that is magical. By creating those boundaries. And you've also talked about accepting personal accountability for ourselves, not accepting the accountability for somebody else. Right. We feel, and you talked about this gray area, how easy it is to feel stressed and overwhelmed. And a lot of times we put the wrong burdens on our shoulders, so to speak. For example, I might say, if my father's drinking, say, I'm upset because this is happening and I'm upset because of that happening, and trying to carry the burden of other people's choices and other people's situations. And at the same time, not taking that accountability and responsibility for the actual things that are my problem and that should be on my shoulders and the work that I personally need to do. And I think it's really interesting to try to clarify, okay, which burdens are mine? What things am I supposed to be dealing with? And what things am I supposed to be letting go of? So I imagine that's part of your job, is to kind of clarify, okay, put this one down. This is theirs, not yours. But guess what? This one is yours. So
let's look at it. The biggest question, one of the first questions I ask a lot of my clients, and a lot of your listeners can ask themselves this question right now, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how fulfilled are you in your life, right? And so a lot of the times when I'm working with people, and that doesn't mean success. You could be a millionaire, you could have multiple businesses that are doing really well, but the question comes from your soul. How fulfilled are you? And when somebody can be really honest and go, well, I'm like a 5, a 6, right? And that's that's because they're so spread out. I mean, I had this client I started with some months back, and she's a mom. She's in the finance world. She has 2 kids. She's married. She wants to become a coach, a meditation instructor, a breathwork instructor. She is, but she wants to make that her full-time gig. And I asked her that question. I said, how fulfilled are you in your life? And she said, like a 5. And I asked her, I said, if you're at a 5, how much of you are your kids actually getting? Like, and she just, oh God, like she's not being the best version of herself for her kids. And accepting that is the first step. So once we accept that, and the whole goal is to get you up to get them everyone up to a 9 or a 10, so that you are being the best version of yourself. They are being the best version of themselves. And in that, you get to give more to your children, more to your spouse, more to your career, more to your health, finances, all of that starts to unfold and get better. But where are you wasting energy in your life? And now we get to start looking at all those areas, the 5 areas of your life, which is spirituality, however that is for you, personal relationships with yourself and others, financial, professional, and physical health and well-being. So those 5 areas, we look at all those. Where can we start to make some changes so that the whole being is filled up? And that's what we're shooting for, is getting into that journey and going, all right, we're in this, and we're going to learn to dance, not fight. We're going to learn to dance through this next part of our life for the rest of our life.
What a beautiful analogy. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about fulfillment then. So is that kind of a personal definition? Because you're asking someone if they're fulfilled. So that means you kind of have to come up with your own answer. And then you talked about those 5 aspects and those 5 areas of our lives. And I think if we look at each of these areas, I think when something is missing, then that affects our feeling of personal fulfillment or not that.
Yes.
And we have a kind of a tendency, or not we, many people, to kind of put life like in a little bento box where, this doesn't touch my physical, does not touch my emotional or mental, and my relationships are over here, and work is a big thing, but it's over here, my money. And so by allowing things to just kind of overlap and realizing all of these aspects are pieces of me and all of them matter. And it's not okay to completely ignore this part of my life because I'm concentrating on this part and creating that balance. So love it. Another everything. Oh, I saw it. So the other thing that I was picking up on as you were coaching this woman who's trying to put things together, and your wake up call that you gave to her was, what do you have available to give to your children? I think a lot of times we think, what is our motivation for making this change? It's like, I'm tough and I can handle this. And yes, I'm not fulfilled, but I'm working toward a goal and da, 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 da. And then when you kind of open up the blinders a little bit and realize, do you know what? By not being in a good place, that is affecting these people that you care about.
Right.
All of a sudden things change. I think that can be a motivation also for people who are struggling with things like depression and anxiety. It's like, oh, I'm fine. I'm tough. I'm strong. I can do this. I've got it all by myself. And then if someone, says, hey, actually, by being where you are, it is affecting the people that you care about, those people around you, then it puts some responsibility on these shoulders to say, I need to fix it. And it's not just about me anymore. Yeah.
That's a big deal. You look at, let's take parenting, for example, and what you just said, if you're constantly, okay, I want to get out of this financial debt I'm in, we'll use that as an example, and you're working too many jobs, or you're not really maximizing what you could be making somehow. Right. And then you come home, you're exhausted, you're reacting to your kids as opposed to parenting your kids. Right? Like really tuning in. What do kids want? They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be loved. Right? When you're constantly combating them, right, then there's going to be some pushback. Are you being the best version of yourself for your children? If that's your biggest motivation, right? So it's taking a step back and looking, going, okay, if my goal is to get out of debt or make more money or build my company to this and it's going to take me X amount of years to get there, right? Am I putting up a certain system in place so that I can be a great father, husband, wife, whatever it is, in that, right? We look at life through a lot of people look at life through a narrow scope without taking the whole big picture. And that's why we want that wheel to turn beautifully. If you're doing one thing that's off in one area of your life, then it's definitely going to have a ripple effect in some other areas. So it's like, let's look at your priorities first. If we can line up your priorities and say, what is the most important thing to you right now? Right. So when we first had our first child, my wife was debating whether to go back to work or not. And we were living in a condo at the time. And we watched our neighbor both parents worked full-time. He was a 3-year-old. They had a full-time nanny, and the kid lost his little car down a elevator shaft, and he was just devastated. And the father and mother were there. It was at night, and he was just crying. And he goes, I want my Carmen. I want my Carmen. In other words, I want my nanny. Right. And again, there's what I'm saying is this is a decision we made for us. We said at that moment, my wife and I looked at each other and we go, let's make sure one of us is going to be in our child's life full time. And this is what we want. We want to make sure that we are present. We made that decision first and foremost. And if it takes an extra year or two to buy a home, then great, then that's okay. But our children's emotional well-being is the most important, and that we're there and we know we get to do the best job with them. Now, that doesn't mean, we still had babysitters and nannies, but we made sure we were the primary focus within their lives. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people, they might not have that. They have to work and they have that full-time help. I totally understand that. But are you building that time in to make sure that if parenting is your number one goal, that you are able to be there and give the best version of yourself for them, to them, right? So
I love it. I love it. So many aspects of that. One, I love that you made a conscious decision. And I think that that's very beautiful and very important. And then you don't have to second guess yourself, because it's always, no, we made this decision that this is what's most important. And you put your priorities together. And that is so beautiful. And then not only did you make this conscious decision to be physically present, but you're also making a conscious decision to be emotionally present. And that is beautiful. And that is a gift to your child that cannot be duplicated. It cannot be hired out. There's nothing that can replace this beautiful thing that you are offering. And it's something, time is a beautiful and amazing commodity, because we all have the same amount, 24 hours in a day, but it's not something we can ever get back. Sometimes people think, you know what, I'm going to concentrate on my career for a quick 40 years or so, and then I'll have time to concentrate on the children. But by then they're gone, and that opportunity has been missed. So how beautiful. And I'm loving this. Okay. So you transferred from a coaching, like as in physical fitness kind of a thing. And then you transferred into, let's incorporate the whole body. A whole person, every part of us, not just the physical. And you also talk about a modern masculine man. And I would kind of love to hear about that, because sometimes in society right now, men get a bad rap, and it's kind of hard. It's like, am I allowed to be a masculine man? What does that look like to be unapologetically a masculine man? So I would love to hear some insight about that.
So, yes. So, like I said, growing up in Boston, you were surrounded by sports and business, and what is it like you want to be tough and you want to fit in and prove yourself. And I think a lot of men, they are brought up that way, that you need to be at a certain level and show that you're not weak and that you can work harder and do all these things. And the truth is, I was a really sensitive younger kid, like really sensitive. I would cry at the drop of a hat in elementary school. Teacher would look at me the wrong way. I'd start crying. I mean, to the point where I thought there was something wrong with me, and we actually paid for therapy for me, thinking that I was too sensitive, because I was in this environment of, if you cry, you're weak, and therefore people are gonna take advantage of you. And so I was like, I'm gonna bury these feelings, and I'm gonna build this body and persona, and I'm gonna put this mask on for this, and I'm gonna put this armor on for this. And that's how I went through the world. And I played sports, and I was a great athlete and played college sports, and was in business. That was my business. I had a business degree, so I interned at multiple Disney business intern at Walt Disney World. And then I worked for multiple companies, Xerox and Enterprise Rent-A-Car and medical device sales and so on. And I had this way that I thought I could be. I got these jobs, but there was a certain persona they expected you to have, right, in these corporations. So what was happening, I was just getting the life sucked out of me. I was getting like, every time I'd be like, why am I so drained? Why am I dreading this? What is wrong now? Those companies are great companies, but for me and my purpose, it wasn't fulfilling what I wanted to do, because I was putting on a certain mask that didn't suit with my soul. So cut to a decade, 15 years ago, I was introduced to men's organizations or men's teams. And, if you look back to what society has, we've always had these tribes with men's outings and so on, and initiations, and we've lost this along the way, right? Where it was about what was happening within the true masculine, aspect of what it was to be a man. And in these teams and organizations, there's a lot that went on. There was leadership development, there was weekly team meetings, there was weekends, initiation weekend, men's weekends, and opportunities to grow, a lot of learning and a lot of just sharing and being. And now you had men from all walks of life. But what it taught me was that authenticity requires vulnerability. And vulnerability, you got to lead with courage to get into that. Right? To truly share what your feelings are, right? Doesn't mean you're going out sharing them with the world in a place that's not safe. But this area, these meetings, this organization that I was a part of, and I ended up being chief executive officer the last couple of years of it, that I was in it, gave me the insight or the ability to look at myself. I knew that in those circles, the truth was always going to be given to me, whether I liked to hear it or not, right? And it was coming from a loving way. What's the definition? They were teams. Definition is that team is that you want to win, but we were looking to win in all areas of our life, right? So showing up and speaking from the heart is something. This is a skill, not a skill. It's our right to be able to do that on a regular basis. But you doing it all the time, there's no turning back. It's like your heart is open, and I'm going to share who I am and what I really want to be. And you have men supporting you in order to do that. So when we talk about what is modern masculine, right? We're not talking about sensitive new age type of men, so to speak, right? We're talking about men that understand and have the emotional ability to feel their feelings, right? To go through a situation and say, all right, I'm feeling this. I'm going to sit with this. I'm going to understand what it is to grieve. Or instead of being angry, I'm going to feel the sadness that exists underneath that. Right? Because what is anger? It covers a lot of that sadness or depression or whatever it is, but it's the ability to feel the feels. And, especially when I teach my breathwork classes, that peels the layers right off, like completely allows people to feel their feelings and get to a place within their soul. And it relieves stuck energy. And so that energy comes up in forms of whatever, grief, sadness, old trauma that we're putting in our bodies. And this is what we get to now work with. We get to feel these things. We get to be honest about them, again, in the right settings, right? But this is where a lot of that freedom comes from. So we're bringing it back to freedom. It's understanding our emotions. And so when we talk about what is modern masculine, right? Modern masculine isn't being this bajillionaire that looks like a powerhouse and goes around operating in fear. It's about looking at people and coming from the right side of your brain and going, oh, I'm going to meet that with compassion. I'm going to be innovative. I'm going to get into the right kind of action, right? As opposed to living in fear, which most people operate in, living in their judge on the left side of the brain, living in that control or hypervigilantness of it all. And the whole point is now we get to come from a better place. We get to not only live longer, be happier, we get to be free, we get to do all these beautiful things in our life because we've made a decision to go in, move forward and run towards what we want in life and not making decisions based upon what we don't want in life. And that's where we get to really step into our power.
This group that you were a part of sounds like magical, like unicorns. Like there's no way that this sort of thing exists.
Yeah.
You're talking about things like allowing yourself to be authentic, allowing yourself to feel, allowing yourself to be, what was the other word? To feel. Yeah. Vulnerable. Yeah. I couldn't remember if I said that or not. And these are things that you felt as a child and things that you tried to suppress because you needed to be a man. And actually, that is a part of you as a human. And I think it's time to allow men to be human without expecting them to say, oh, actually, you're not allowed to feel because you are a man. Yeah. And actually, when you are allowed to be able to feel, that helps us to be able to relate to other people and to be able to communicate. And especially if you're in a marriage, in a relationship, if there's a woman involved, guess what? She feels. And women are allowed to feel. And sometimes we feel a little bigger than probably should. But to be able to relate to that and say, that's okay, because that is a part of me. And to feel safe. I think that is a beautiful amount of freedom. So I quite like your definition of a modern masculine man.
Well, it's, you say that and you're kind of giving me chills a little with this because this has been a big part of, I've been married going on 16 years and together for 18 years, this, if your goal is to be a better partner, right? If it is with, whatever type of relationship you're in, there's a masculine and a feminine balance. There's a polarity that exists within that, right? And to have that masculine and feminine, whatever it is, man, woman, whatever, there's that aspect of it. And to be able to let go and hold that space and understand what the feminine is going through, if we're talking masculine, it's integrating our own feminine to a certain degree. It's understanding our feelings. It's allowing those things to go. And in turn, we're able to see our partner in a much more open way. And the polarity, that chemistry, right, at that point, if that's what you're looking for, becomes much more powerful because you can hold that container to let her go and do what she needs to do to be the woman she wants to be or deserves to be. But some men don't know how to hold that container, and then the woman isn't fully able to express herself, right? And vice versa. It's both. It's finding that sense within yourself, finding that balance within yourself so that you're able to give that, you're able to communicate, you're able to have compassion, you're able to understand, and men, not try to fix a situation, just understand a situation.
Yeah, we could go on with that one for a while.
Yeah.
But the thing that I'm seeing that we're coming back to again and again and again is that the first step that we need to take, if we're talking about our business, if we're talking about our relationship, if we're talking about any of these aspects, it begins with ourselves and being in that healthy, whole, free place. And then that helps us to be able to then interact with our spouse, with our partner, with our business, with our whatever, in a healthy, beautiful way.
Right.
So thank you for all the wisdom that you've shared. And thank you for sharing your time with me today. It's been fantastic.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed talking to you.
It has been a pleasure. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Harbhajan Singh Yogi. He said, "Your mind, emotions, and body are instruments. And the way you align and tune them determines how well you will play life. Today, I invite you to align and tune your mind, emotions, and body so you can become your best self and enjoy a free and successful life. See you next time on Linda's Corner.